They say blood is thicker than water. What they don't tell you is that sometimes blood is what drowns you. I'm sitting in a cafe in Portland right now, watching the rain streak down the window, and I can still feel the weight of that pen in my hand. The one I didn't use when they asked me to sign. The one that would have made it all official. The one that would have transferred everything I'd built over the last 8 years to my younger sister Madison, who'd spent those same 8 years posting selfies and complaining about how corporate life wasn't for her. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. Way back. Because this story doesn't start with the signing. It starts with a little girl who learned very early that being quiet meant being forgotten, and being forgotten meant being safe. My name is Charlotte West, and for most of my life, I was the invisible daughter. I was 7 years old the first time I realized I was the spare. It was Madison's 5th birthday party, one of those elaborate affairs my mother insisted on throwing, complete with a rented bounce house, a face painter, and a cake shaped like a castle. There were maybe 30 kids there, mostly Madison's preschool friends and their siblings, all running around our backyard in that beautiful chaos that only children's parties can create. I was in the corner, reading. Even then, even at 7, I preferred books to people. I'd found a spot under the oak tree, away from the noise, and I was deep into a Nancy Drew mystery when my Aunt Linda found me. "Charlotte, honey, why aren't you playing with the other kids?" I looked up from my book. "I'm reading." "I can see that, sweetheart. But it's a party. Don't you want to have fun?" "I am having fun." She gave me that look, the one adults give kids when they don't quite understand them. Then she patted my head and walked away, and I heard her say to my mother, "She's such a serious little thing, isn't she?" My mother's response, "Oh, that's just Charlotte. She's always been like that. Independent." The word hung in the air like a verdict. Independent. Not smart or focused or mature for her age. Just independent, which was code for doesn't need attention. Which was code for we can focus on Madison. And they did. Madison was the sun in our family solar system. Everything revolved around her. Her dance classes, her play dates, her school projects, her moods, her dreams, her fears, her triumphs, her failures. She was expressive and emotional and demanding in that way that small children can be. And my parents responded to it like flowers turning toward light. I was the moon, visible but distant, present but not particularly noticed. And I learned early that if I wanted to survive in that family, I needed to be self-sufficient. So I became self-sufficient. I did my homework without being asked. I packed my own lunches. I got myself to the bus stop every morning while my mother was busy getting Madison dressed, because Madison had trouble with buttons. I learned to cook simple meals by the time I was 9, because dinner was often delayed by Madison's ballet rehearsals or voice lessons or whatever extracurricular had captured her attention that season. Nobody thanked me for any of this, but nobody yelled at me either. And in a house where Madison's emotional weather determined everyone's mood, not being yelled at felt like winning. The pattern continued through middle school and high school. Madison joined the drama club and became the lead in every school musical. She was legitimately talented. I'll give her that. She had a beautiful voice and natural stage presence. And when she performed, you couldn't look away from her. My parents attended every rehearsal, Every performance, every cast party. They kept scrapbooks filled with programs and photos and reviews from the local newspaper. I joined the debate team and made it to state finals my junior year. My parents couldn't attend the competition because it fell on the same weekend as Madison's regional dance showcase. "We're so proud of you, honey," my mother said, giving me a distracted hug before rushing out the door. "Just do your best. We'll celebrate when we get back." We didn't celebrate. By the time they returned, flushed with excitement over Madison's second-place trophy, my third-place medal felt like something I shouldn't bother mentioning. I kept it in my desk drawer and never brought it up. This is what being the invisible child teaches you. Your accomplishments only matter if they don't interfere with the visible child's narrative. Your needs are valid only if they're convenient. Your feelings exist only in the spaces between everyone else's feelings. And so you learn to need less, to want less, to take up less space. You learn to be invisible, not because you're born that way, but because visibility costs more than you can afford to pay. I met my best friend Sarah in 10th grade. She was a transfer student from California. All wild curly hair and vintage band t-shirts and an unapologetic weirdness that I found mesmerizing. We bonded over a shared love of dystopian fiction and a shared hatred of pep rallies, and within a month, we were inseparable. Sarah was the first person who actually saw me. "Your family is fucked up, you know that," she said one afternoon. We were at her house, supposedly doing homework, but actually eating chips and watching music videos. "They're fine, Assaz," said automatically. "Charlie, I've been coming to your house for 3 months. Your mum has asked about Madison in front of Demi like 50 times. She's asked about you maybe twice. And one of those times was to ask if you'd picked up Madison from practice." I didn't respond. "That's not normal," Sarah continued. "You're like genuinely interesting. You're smart and funny and you actually think about stuff. But they treat you like you're furniture. They don't mean to. Does that make it better?" I thought about that. No, but it makes it survivable. Sarah looked at me for a long moment, then pulled me into a hug. One of those fierce, unexpected hugs that make you realize how touch-starved you've been. "You deserve better than survivable," she said. I believed her, but I didn't know how to get it. College was my escape hatch. I applied to 12 schools, mostly out of state, no with good business programs. I didn't tell my parents until I'd already been accepted to 7 of them. When I finally showed them the acceptance letters, my father barely looked up from his newspaper. "That's nice, honey. Where's Madison applying?" Madison was a sophomore, 2 years behind me, and already stressed about college applications, even though she had plenty of time. She wanted to go to a performing arts school. Juilliard was the dream. But her grades were mediocre, and her parents were worried she wouldn't get in. "I'm thinking University of Oregon," I said. "They have a strong business program, and I got a partial scholarship." "Oregon's far," my mother said, frowning. "Why not Portland State? You could live at home, save money." "I want to go away for college. But what about Madison? She's going to need help with her applications next year. You've always been so good at writing." There it was. The invisible expectation that I'd subordinate my future to Madison's present needs. "Madison will figure it out," I said. "I'm going to Oregon." My father finally looked up. Don't be selfish, Charlotte. Family helps family. I went to Oregon. The University of Oregon was where I started to understand who I could become. Away from my family's gravitational pull, I discovered I wasn't actually quiet. I just hadn't had anything worth saying in a house where nobody was listening. I joined clubs. I made friends. I dated a guy named Marcus for 8 months until we both realized we wanted different things. I got straight A's not because I was trying to prove anything, but because I genuinely loved learning. And I discovered I was good at business. Not in an abstract, theoretical way, in a practical, solve actual problems way. I took a class called Small Business Management, my sophomore year, and something clicked. The professor assigned us to analyze struggling local businesses and propose solutions. I chose a family-owned bookstore that was losing customers to Amazon. I spent 3 weeks analyzing their inventory, their customer base, their online presence, their location advantages. I proposed a complete restructuring. Host author events, partner with local schools, create a cafe space, build a loyalty program, develop a specialty niche in rare and signed first editions. My professor gave me an A+ and said, "You should do this professionally." I laughed it off at the time. But the seed was planted. My junior year, I took an internship with a business consulting firm in Eugene. It was unglamorous work, mostly data entry and scheduling. But I watched how the consultants operated, how they assessed problems, proposed solutions, implemented changes, how they transformed struggling businesses into profitable ones through systems and strategy. I was fascinated. The senior consultant, a woman named Margaret, noticed my interest. She started giving me small projects, analyzing spreadsheets, researching competitors, drafting client reports. I worked on them obsessively, staying late, refining every detail. "You're good at this," Margaret told me one afternoon. "You have an eye for inefficiency. That's rare." Thank you. Have you thought about what you want to do after graduation? I don't know. Get a job somewhere, I guess. Pay off student loans. She studied me for a moment. You should start your own firm. I laughed. I'm 20 years old. Nobody's going to hire a 20-year-old consultant. Not at first. But you build credibility. You start small. Deliver results. Get referrals. In 5 years, you could have something real. That sounds impossible. Only if you don't try. I thought about that conversation for weeks, months. It lodged in my brain like a splinter I couldn't remove. You could have something real. Something real. Something mine. Something nobody could take credit for or dismiss as a cute hobby or expect me to share because family helps family. By the time I graduated, I'd made a decision. I was going to build something. I didn't tell my family about my business plan until Christmas break, my senior year. We were all home. Me, Madison, my parents, my Aunt Linda and Uncle Dave, my grandmother. The house smelled like pine and cinnamon, and everyone was in that pleasant post-dinner haze that comes from too much food and too much wine. Madison was holding court, as usual, talking about her acceptance to UCLA's theater program. She hadn't gotten into Juilliard. Her audition hadn't gone well. But UCLA was a good backup, and she was making the best of it. "I'm thinking I might focus on musical theater," she was saying. "Broadway's the dream, obviously. But I could also do TV. There's so much good TV now. Streaming has really opened things up for performers. Everyone nodded encouragingly. What about you, Charlotte? My grandmother asked. What are your plans after graduation? All eyes turned to me. I'm starting a business. Aid. Silence. Then my father laughed. A business? Honey, you need capital for that. Experience, connections. I have a plan. I'm going to offer consulting services to small family businesses, help them modernize their operations, improve efficiency, increase profitability. That sounds complicated, my mother said. It's not, actually. Most small businesses fail because of poor systems, not poor products. If you can identify the inefficiencies and fix them, you can turn things around. And people will pay you for this? Uncle Dave asked skeptically. They already do. I've been helping a local bookstore in Eugene, and their revenue is up 18%. That's nice, dear, my grandmother said, in the tone people use when they're humoring children. But maybe you should get a real job first. Build up some savings. Then you could try the business thing as a side project. I don't want it to be a side project. I want it to be the project. Madison rolled her eyes. God, Charlie, you're so intense. Can't you just like Kate, relax, and enjoy life for once? I enjoy building things. You enjoy being stressed. There's a difference. My father leaned back in his chair. Charlotte, I appreciate your ambition. I really do. But starting a business right out of college, that is risky. You don't have a safety net. What happens if it fails? Then I'll get a job and try again. That's irresponsible. It's my life. The room went quiet again. My mother cleared her throat. Let's not argue on Christmas, she said brightly. Charlotte, honey, we just want what's best for you. And rushing into something risky right out of school. It worries us. What she meant was, you're making us uncomfortable with your ambition. Can you please be smaller and easier to manage? I excused myself early that night, claiming I had a headache. Sarah called me at midnight. How bad was it? She asked. They think I'm being irresponsible. Of course they do. You're threatening the family narrative, where Madison is the ambitious one and you're the sensible one. If you succeed, it makes them look bad for ignoring you all these years. That's not fair. Most things aren't. Are you still going to do it? I looked around my childhood bedroom, at the debate team medals in the drawer, the photos on the wall where I'm always slightly out of frame, the bookshelf filled with stories about people who did impossible things. Yeah, I said, I'm still going to do it. Good. Fuck 'em, Maud smiled. Fuck 'em. I graduated in May with a 3.9 GPA and $4,000 in savings. My parents attended the ceremony. They took photos. They took me to dinner. They were polite and proud in that surface-level way that suggested they were performing parental duties rather than feeling actual pride. Madison couldn't come. She had rehearsals for a UCLA showcase. She feels terrible, my mother assured me. She really wanted to be here. It's fine, I said. And it was fine. Because I'd stopped expecting Madison to show up for me the same way everyone always showed up for her. After graduation, I moved to Portland. I chose Portland specifically because it wasn't home, Seattle, where my parents lived. But it wasn't too far away, close enough to access clients, far enough to build something separate from my family's shadow. I rented a tiny studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood, furnished it with Craigslist finds and Target clearance items, and got to work. Starting Bridge Consulting was like trying to build a house with no blueprint, no tools, and no experience in construction. Everything was harder than I expected. I spent the first month just setting up the legal structure, filing LLC paperwork, getting business insurance, opening a business bank account, building a website. I taught myself basic web design through YouTube tutorials and created a logo using free design software. It wasn't perfect, but it was Maya. Then came the hard part: finding clients. I created a list of every family-owned business in the Portland metro area: restaurants, retail stores, service companies, anything that fit my target market. Then I started calling. Cold calling is humiliating. Most people hung up on me within 30 seconds. Some were polite about it. "We're all set. Thanks." But others were actively hostile. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm not interested in whatever you're selling." "Take me off your list." Click. I got rejected 97 times before I got my first meeting. The owner of a struggling hardware store agreed to meet with me. Mostly, I think, because he felt sorry for me. His name was Frank Morrison, and he'd inherited the business from his father, who'd inherited it from his father. 3 generations of Morrisons had run Morrison Hardware, and Frank was watching it die. "Home Depot is killing me," he said when I met him at the store. "I can't compete on price. I can't compete on inventory. I don't know what to do." I spent 2 days at Morrison Hardware, watching how they operated. I talked to employees. I talked to customers. I analyzed their inventory, their pricing, their marketing, their location. Then I wrote a 20-page proposal. The core insight was simple. Frank couldn't compete with Home Depot on price or selection, but he didn't need to. He needed to compete on service, expertise, and community connection. My recommendations: specialize in a niche, high-quality tools and supplies for professional contractors and serious diggers. Offer classes and workshops, basic home repair, woodworking, etc. Create a loyalty program for repeat customers. Partner with local contractors for referral business. Move 15% of sales online with local delivery. Completely reorganize the store layout for better flow. Frank listened to my presentation, then asked the question I'd been dreading. "How much is this going to cost me?" $5,000 for implementation. "And I'll work on commission, 2% of any revenue increase over your current baseline for the next year." He thought about it. "You really think this'll work?" "I think it's worth trying. If it doesn't work, you're out $5,000. If it does work, you might save your business." He hired me. Implementing the Morrison Hardware turnaround was brutal. I worked 16-hour days for 6 weeks. I reorganized inventory, trained staff, designed marketing materials, set up the online store, planned the workshop schedule, reached out to contractors. Frank was skeptical at first, but he trusted me enough to let me make changes. The results took 3 months to materialize. Then they did. Revenue was up 12% the first quarter, 23% the second quarter, 30% by the end of the year. Frank referred me to 3 other business owners. Those owners referred me to others. By the end of my first year, I had 6 clients and was barely breaking even financially, but building something real. I worked 3 side jobs to keep myself afloat. Bookkeeping for a law firm 3 days a week, freelance web design on weekends, occasional catering shifts for extra cash. I slept 4 hours a night. I lived on coffee and cheap takeout. I had no social life. I didn't date. I barely saw Sarah, who'd moved to San Francisco for a tech job. But I was building something. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I mattered. My family didn't understand. "You look exhausted," my mother said when I came home for Thanksgiving that year. "This business is running you into the ground." "I'm fine, Mom." "You're not fine. Look at you. You've lost weight. You have circles under your eyes. This isn't healthy." "It's temporary. I'm in the startup phase." "Charlotte, maybe it's time to admit this isn't working. You could get a real job, benefits, stability. This is a real job. You know what I mean." Madison wandered into the kitchen, fresh from a bubble bath, wearing one of those luxury robes that cost more than my monthly rent. "Oh my God, Charlie, you look like shit," she said cheerfully. "Are you sick?" "I'm tired." "Well, yeah, obviously. That's what happens when you work yourself to death for some startup that's probably going to fail anyway." "It's not going to fail. Most businesses fail within the first 5 years. That's like a statistic." "Madison," my mother said warningly. "What? I'm just being realistic. Charlie's killing herself for something that's probably not going to work out. Someone should tell her." I left the kitchen. Later, my father pulled me aside. "You know we love you," he said. "We just worry. This business thing seems like a lot of stress for not much reward." "I made $30,000 this year. That's less than you'd make in an entry-level corporate job." "It's my first year." "I know, honey. I want you to be happy, and you don't look happy." "I am happy." "Are you?" I thought about that. Was happy I was exhausted, broke, stressed, lonely. But underneath all that, there was something else. A sense of purpose. A feeling that I was building towards something that mattered. "Yeah," I said. "I am." My father sighed. "Okay, just don't work yourself to death, all right? Life is short." I promised I wouldn't. I broke that promise almost immediately. Year 2 was when things started accelerating. I hired my first employee, a part-time administrative assistant named Jenny, who helped with scheduling, invoicing, and client communication. This freed me up to focus on actual consulting work, and the quality of my deliverables improved immediately. I landed a big client, a family-owned restaurant group with 4 locations that was struggling with inconsistent systems and high employee turnover. I spent 3 months overhauling their operations manual, training program, and management structure. Their turnover dropped by 40% and their profit margins improved by 18%. They paid me $50,000 and referred me to 2 other restaurant groups. By the end of year 2, I had 12 clients and revenue of $180,000. I hired 2 more employees, a data analyst and a junior consultant. I moved out of my studio apartment into a 1-bedroom in a nicer neighborhood. I bought a car that wasn't held together by duct tape and prayer. And I started sleeping 6 hours a night instead of 4. It felt like winning. My parents' reaction to my success was complicated. They were proud, I think, in their way. But it was a confused pride, mixed with resentment, that I'd proven them wrong, and mild annoyance that I wasn't available for family events because I was always working late. "You should come to Madison's showcase next month," my mother said during one of our weekly phone calls. "She's performing a solo piece she choreographed herself." "I have a client presentation that day. I can't reschedule." "Can't someone else do the presentation?" "Mum, I only have 3 employees. Still, family comes first. My business is my family right now." Silence, then. "That's a sad way to live, Charlotte." Maybe it was sad. Maybe normal people had better work-life balance, more friends, active dating lives, hobbies that didn't involve spreadsheets. But I wasn't building something normal. I was building something that would last. Year 3 brought the office. I'd been working out of my apartment and coffee shops for 2 years. But with 5 employees and growing client demands, I needed actual space. I found a small office suite in southeast Portland. 3 rooms, a bathroom, a kitchenette, nothing fancy but professional. The day we moved in, Jenny brought champagne, and we toasted to Bridge Consulting's official headquarters. It felt absurdly official, like I was playing dress-up as a real businesswoman. But then clients started coming for meetings, and employees had desks. And there was a conference room with a whiteboard where we could brainstorm solutions. And slowly, it stopped feeling like dress-up and started feeling real. We had 22 clients that year. Revenue hit $850,000. I hired a business development manager and 3 more consultants. I started getting invited to speak at small business conferences. A local business magazine did a profile on me. 27-year-old entrepreneur helps family businesses thrive in digital age. My parents framed the article and put it on their mantle, right next to Madison's headshots from her Los Angeles acting career, which consisted mostly of commercial auditions and one line in a network procedural. Madison and I had coffee that year during one of her trips home. She'd moved to Los Angeles after graduating UCLA and was trying to make it as an actress. From what I could tell, this meant working as a waitress at an upscale restaurant while going to auditions and taking expensive acting classes. "How's LA?" I asked. She sighed dramatically. "Exhausting. Do you know how many beautiful, talented people are out there? It's insane. I go to auditions and there are like 50 girls who look exactly like me, all competing for the same role." "That sounds tough." "It is. But I'm not giving up. I just need my break, you know? One good role and everything changes." "I believe in you." She looked surprised. "Really?" "Yeah, you're talented, Mads. You always have been." She smiled, a real smile, not the performative Instagram version. "Thanks, Charlie. That means a lot." We sipped our coffees in companionable silence. Then she said, "Your business is doing really well, huh?" "Yeah, we're growing." "That's cool. I mean, it's not what I'd want to do, all those spreadsheets and boring meetings, but it's cool that you're good at it." "Thanks." "Do you ever, have fun?" "I have fun, Madsen. No, I mean real fun. Dating, going out, doing things that aren't work. Not really." "Charlie, you're 27. You should be enjoying life, sir." "I am enjoying life. Building something makes me happy, if you say so." She checked her phone. "Shit, huh? I have to run. Lunch with my agent. But let's do this again, okay, Adiz?" "Okay." She hugged me goodbye, and I watched her drive away in a leased BMW, probably paid for by our parents. And I felt something complicated that I couldn't quite name. Not jealousy, not resentment. Maybe sadness that we'd never really known each other, that we'd grown up in the same house but lived completely different lives, shaped by completely different expectations. She was the star who'd been given a spotlight and couldn't quite figure out why it wasn't bright enough. I was the moon who'd learned to generate her own light. Years 4 and 5 blurred together in the best way. The business grew. We moved to a bigger office. I hired a CFO, Patricia Sandoval, a brilliant woman who'd worked at Deloitte and was looking for something more entrepreneurial. She brought structure and financial sophistication that I desperately needed. We hit 2 million in revenue year 4, 3 million year 5. We had 40 employees. Offices in Portland and Seattle, clients in 6 states. I was 30 years old, and I'd built something that mattered. But something happened in year 5 that changed everything. I got approached by a private equity firm. They'd heard about bridge consulting through industry connections, and they wanted to discuss a potential investment. Just a preliminary conversation, they said. Get to know each other. Explore possibilities. I met with them out of curiosity more than anything else. The lead investor was a woman named Veronica Tran, sharp and direct in the way I appreciated. You've built something impressive, she said, reviewing our financials. Sustainable growth, high client retention, strong margins. We're interested in helping you scale. What does that mean exactly? Investment capital for expansion. Strategic guidance. Connections to larger clients. A potential path to acquisition in 3 to 5 years. Acquisition? If you wanted to sell eventually, we'd help position the company for maximum value. We're talking 30 to 50 million, potentially more depending on growth. I felt lightheaded. $30 to $50 million for something I'd started with $4,000 and a laptop. I'll need to think about it, I said. Of course. But Charlotte, companies like yours are rare. You've done the hard part. You've proven the concept and built the foundation. Now it's about scaling, and we'd like to be part of that journey. I didn't tell my family about the PE conversation. Not yet. Because I knew what would happen. They'd see dollar signs. They'd start calculating their share. They'd start treating my business like a family asset that needed to be distributed fairly. And I wasn't ready for that fight. The conversation that changed everything happened on an ordinary Sunday in October. 8 years after I'd started Bridge Consulting. 6 months after the private equity conversation. 3 weeks after we'd closed our best quarter ever. 2.8 million in revenue in 3 months. I was tired, but satisfied. The kind of tired that comes from building something real. The kind that feels earned. I showed up at my parents' house at 4:58 p.m., as always, for the mandatory Sunday dinner. Madison was already there, looking Instagram perfect in a cream-colored sweater and designer jeans. She'd been back in Seattle for 6 months after the Los Angeles hadn't panned out the way she'd hoped. She was regrouping, as my mother put it, which seemed to involve a lot of yoga classes and networking brunches and vague talk about finding her passion. "Charlie," my mother called from the kitchen. "You're late." I checked my watch. 4:58. "Traffic," I said. Which wasn't true, but was easier than arguing. Dinner was the usual production. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, rolls. My father carved the meat with ceremonial precision. My mother served the sides with practiced efficiency. Madison picked at her food while scrolling through her phone under the table. I was exhausted. I'd been working 12-hour days for weeks, preparing for the PE firm's full due diligence process. They were serious about investing. We were in active negotiations. My lawyers were reviewing term sheets. I hadn't told anyone yet. I should have known my silence would be temporary. So, my father began, setting down his knife with that deliberate movement that meant a serious conversation was about to happen. Your mother and I have been thinking about bridge consulting. I looked up from my potatoes. Madison set down her phone. We're very proud of what you've accomplished, Charlotte, my mother added quickly. You've built something truly impressive. Warning bells went off in my head. They never started conversations with praise unless they wanted something. Thank you, I said carefully. But we're concerned, my father continued, about sustainability, about what happens to everything you've built if something happens to you. Nothing's going to happen to me. You don't know that. You're working yourself to exhaustion. And legally, if something did happen, and I'm not saying it will, but we have to think practically. Everything you've built could be at risk. Lawsuits, debt, dissolution. We don't want that for you. I have insurance, legal protections. That's not enough, my mother said. That's why we've been talking to a lawyer about family succession planning. There it was. Succession planning, I repeated flatly. The business is worth significant money now, my father said. Several $1 million from what we understand. I didn't confirm or deny. I'd never told them specific numbers. That's an asset that belongs to the family, he continued. It should be protected, preserved, passed down. It's my company, Dad. I built it. Of course you did. And we're proud of that. But honey, think about it. You built it with family support. We raised you, educated you, gave you the foundation you needed to succeed. In a sense, we all contributed to this. I stared at him. You want credit for my business because you raised me? Not credit, my mother said quickly. We're just saying that family assets should be treated as family assets. We've consulted with our lawyer, and we think the best approach is to create a family trust structure. She said it so casually, like she was suggesting a new recipe. Here's what we're proposing, my father said, pulling out a folder. We establish the West Family Business Trust. The trust owns Bridge Consulting. You and Madison serve as equal co-owners with 45% beneficial interest each. Your mother and I serve as trustees with decision-making authority until we're gone, at which point you and Madison take over jointly. The room tilted. You want to take my company and give half of it to Madison. We want to secure your legacy, my mother corrected, and give Madison an opportunity to contribute. She's been struggling to find her path. This could be perfect for her. I looked at Madison. She was smiling. Not sheepishly, not apologetically. Just smiling like someone who'd just been handed a gift she didn't earn. This is amazing, Madison said. I've been thinking I need something more substantial than the freelance stuff I've been doing. This could be perfect. You've never expressed interest in business, I said. I've never had the opportunity, but I'm a fast learner, and I'm good with people, which you've always struggled with. We could be a great team, yeah. We're not a team, Madison. I built this company alone. But you don't have to run it alone anymore, my mother said. That's the beauty of this. You can finally have some support, some help. I have 40 employees. I have a senior management team. I have a CFO. But you don't have family, my father said. And family is what lasts. Family is what you can trust. The word trust felt like a slap. We've already had preliminary documents drawn up, he continued, pulling papers from the folder. Our lawyer says the process is straightforward. We just need your signature, and we can have everything finalized within 30 days. For tax purposes, my mother added. It's better to do these things quickly. I sat there, fork in hand, world collapsing. They'd planned this, discussed it with lawyers, drawn up paperwork, made decisions about my life's work without consulting me, and they were presenting it like a fait accompli. Like I should be grateful they were letting me keep 45% of what was entirely mine. I need to see the paperwork, I said quietly. Of course, my father said, visibly relieved. We'll have our lawyer send everything over. But Charlotte, I want you to understand, this is protection, security. We're doing this for you. When do you need my signature? By the end of the month. The lawyer says the timing works better that way. I nodded slowly, not trusting myself to speak. The rest of dinner was a blur. I helped with dishes on autopilot. I nodded at appropriate times. I smiled when expected. And when I finally left, driving back through the dark Portland streets to my empty apartment, I felt something crystallize inside me. Not anger, clarity. They wanted my business. Fine. But they'd have to take it from me. And I'd make absolutely certain they understood what they were taking. The paperwork arrived via courier 3 days later. 47 pages of dense legal language, professionally bound, with little colored tabs marking where I needed to sign. I sat at my dining table and read every single word. The structure was exactly as my father had described. The West Family Business Trust would own 100% of Bridge Consulting LLC. My parents would serve as trustees with full decision-making authority. Madison and I would each receive 45% beneficial interest, with 10% held in reserve for future family members or contingencies. Buried in the middle of the document was a clause that made my blood run cold. Trustees shall have sole and absolute discretion over all business decisions, including but not limited to strategic direction, hiring and termination of employees, approval of contracts, distribution of profits, sale of assets, and determination of management compensation. Beneficiaries may not act on behalf of the trust without express written consent from both trustees. In other words, they'd control everything. I'd be an employee in my own company. My salary, my decisions, my authority, all subject to my parents' approval. And Madison would be my equal partner, despite never having worked a day in business. I called David Chen, my lawyer. "Don't sign this," he said immediately. "I'm not planning to." Good. Because this is legalized theft. You'd be giving them absolute control over everything you've built. They think it's their right. I'm their daughter. They raised me, therefore. My success belongs to the family. That's not how the law works, but it's how family works. In their meantime, David was quiet for a moment. What are you going to do? I'm going to protect what's mine. How? I'd been thinking about this for 3 days, turning it over in my mind, examining it from every angle, looking for the cleanest solution. They want Bridge Consulting LLC, I said slowly. So I'm going to give them Bridge Consulting LLC. But first, I'm going to make absolutely certain there's nothing inside it. I could hear David's smile through the phone. You're going to hollow it out? Is that legal? Completely legal. Bridge Consulting is your company. You can restructure it however you want. You can create subsidiaries, transfer assets, reorganize operations, all standard corporate stuff. And if I do that before I sign their papers, then you're signing over an empty shell. Not illegal, not unethical, just strategic. How long would it take? To do it properly? 3 weeks, maybe 4? I have less than 3 weeks before they want my signature. Then we'd better move fast. The restructuring of Bridge Consulting LLC was the most intense 3 weeks of my professional life. I brought Patricia into the plan immediately. She was my CFO, my right hand, and I needed her expertise to pull this off legally and completely. Walk me through what you're thinking, she said when I called her into my office. I laid out the situation, the family demand, the trust document, the timeline. Jesus, she said when I finished. Your family is... I know. Okay, so you want to basically move all the actual business operations into a new entity and leave Bridge Consulting LLC as just an empty registration. Exactly. Can we do it? She thought for a moment. You already have the parent company structure, Charlotte West Holdings. That makes it easier. We create a new subsidiary under the parent company. Call it Bridge Consulting Services. Transfer all active contracts, employees, IP, assets, everything to the new entity. Leave the old LLC with nothing but the name. How do we transfer contracts? Corporate restructuring happens all the time. We notify clients of a routine reorganization and send updated contracts with Bridge Consulting Services. Most will sign without thinking twice because they trust you, not the company name. What about employees? Same thing. We transfer everyone to the new entity with identical positions and compensation. It's seamless from their perspective. Assets, IP, all transferred. The proprietary software we've developed, the methodologies, the client databases, the office lease, everything moves to Bridge Consulting Services. And what's left in Bridge Consulting LLC? Just the original registration and whatever cash you want to leave in the account. A few $100s. I smiled. Can we do this in 3 weeks? Patricia grinned. We can do this in 2. Let's burn it down. We didn't burn it down. We moved it. Carefully, methodically, legally. Patricia and I worked 18-hour days. We drafted new contracts. We filed incorporation papers for Bridge Consulting Services. We prepared employee transfer agreements. We contacted every single client with carefully worded emails about routine corporate restructuring for enhanced service delivery. David Chen reviewed every document to ensure it was bulletproof. This is beautiful, he said, reading through the transfer agreements. Corporate housekeeping. Perfectly legal. And perfectly devastating. The hardest part was keeping it quiet. I couldn't tell all 40 employees what was really happening. Most of them just knew we were reorganizing for efficiency. A standard business practice. Only Patricia and David knew the full truth. I did tell 2 other people, my senior consultant, Marcus, and my head of business development, Jennifer. They'd been with me since year 3, and I trusted them completely. Your family is trying to take your company? Marcus asked, stunned. They think they're protecting it. They don't see it as taking. That's insane. I know, but that's why I need your help. We have to move fast, and I need you both to keep this absolutely confidential. Whatever you need, Jennifer said. We've got your back. For the next 2 weeks, we executed the plan with military precision. Every contract was transferred. Every client was notified and agreed to updated terms with Bridge Consulting Services. 98% signed the new contracts without question, because they hired us for our expertise, not our corporate name. Every employee was moved to the new entity. We processed the transfers over a weekend, updating all payroll systems, benefits, everything. On Monday morning, everyone showed up for work at the same office, doing the same jobs, with slightly different paperwork. Nobody noticed. Or if they did, they didn't care. The office lease was transferred to Charlotte West Holdings, with Bridge Consulting Services as the tenant. The proprietary software and methodologies we developed, all intellectual property, was formally assigned to Bridge Consulting Services. Every bank account, every asset, every piece of value was moved. By the end of a week 2, Bridge Consulting LLC existed only on paper. It had no employees, no clients, no contracts, no revenue, no assets. Just a registered business name and exactly $857.32 in a checking account. Enough to keep it technically active but functionally worthless. And this empty shell, this corporate ghost, was what I was about to sign over to my family. The deadline fell on a Tuesday. My father called that morning at 7 a.m. Charlotte, the lawyer needs your signature today. Can you come by the house this afternoon? I'll be there at 3. Excellent. This is the right decision, honey. You're securing your future. I hung up and sat in my office. The real office, the one that now belonged to Bridge Consulting Services, under the umbrella of Charlotte West Holdings, and felt nothing but calm. Patricia stopped by around noon. Everything's finalized, she said. All transfers complete. All documentation filed. Bridge Consulting Services is officially operational with 100% of the business assets. And Bridge Consulting LLC has $847 and a business registration. That's it. Perfect. She studied me. How are you feeling? Peaceful. Good, because what you're about to do is either brilliant or completely insane. Maybe both. She laughed. Definitely both. Good luck this afternoon. I drove to my parents' house at 2:45. They were waiting in the dining room, the same room where they'd first announced their plan. My father sat at the head of the table with the paperwork spread out. My mother stood by the window. Madison was on the couch, looking bored but expectant. The folder of documents sat in the center of the table. 47 pages, marked with colored tabs. Ready? My father asked. Ready, I said. He slid the papers across to me. I picked up the pen. My mother exhaled with relief, and I signed. Every single page. Clearly, carefully, without hesitation. I initialed where required. Dated everything. I used the notary my father had brought, a woman from his bank, who witnessed my signature and stamped each page with her official seal. When I finished, I slid the papers back across the table. There, I said. All done. My mother actually teared up. Oh, Charlotte, this is wonderful. You've made the right choice. Madison looked up from her phone. So when do I start? Whenever you want, my father said, organizing the papers into a folder with satisfaction. Charlotte can bring you up to speed next week. We'll schedule a formal transition meeting. Cool. I'm thinking we should rebrand. Bridge consulting is kind of boring. Maybe something more modern. That's something you girls can discuss, my mother said. I stood up. Well, if that's everything, I should get back to work. Of course, my father said. We'll have our lawyer file these tomorrow. It'll take a few weeks to process, but you'll get copies of everything. Great, I said. I walked to the door. My hand was on the knob when my mother called out, Charlotte? I turned. She was smiling. That proud mother's smile I'd spent my whole life trying to earn. We really are proud of you, she said. I smiled back. I know, Mum. I drove back to my office and sat at my desk for a long time, looking out the window at the Portland skyline. I'd just signed away my company. Except I hadn't. I'd signed away a name. The business itself, the real business, the one I'd built with blood and sweat and 8 years of my life, was still entirely mine. And they had no idea. I gave them 3 weeks. 3 weeks to celebrate. 3 weeks to plan. 3 weeks to dream about their new family empire. Madison updated her LinkedIn profile the next day. Co-owner, Bridge Consulting. She started posting inspirational quotes about entrepreneurship on Instagram, complete with the photos of herself in business casual outfits she'd clearly bought for the occasion. My mother told everyone at her book club about how proud she was that her daughters were going into business together. My father started dropping mentions of the family business in conversations with his golf buddies. I watched it all happen and said nothing. I went to work every day at the Bridge Consulting Services office. I met with clients. I managed my team. I continued negotiations with the private equity firm, who were moving toward a formal investment offer. My life continued exactly as it had before I signed the papers. Because nothing had actually changed for me. Everything had changed for them. They just didn't know it yet. Madison's first visit to the office happened on a Tuesday morning exactly 3 weeks after the signing. I was in a meeting with Patricia and Marcus discussing our expansion timeline when my phone buzzed. A text from Jenny, who still worked at the old Morrison Street building we'd vacated. Madison just showed up at the old office. Security won't let her in. She's not on the approved list. I glanced at my phone and felt something warm bloom in my chest. It was starting. I texted back. Handle it gently. Be polite, but firm. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Madison. I let it ring 4 times before answering, just to give myself time to arrange my expression into something appropriately neutral. Not that she could see me, but I wanted my voice to match. Hey, Mads, what's up? Charlie, what the fuck? Her voice was shrill, panicked in a way Madison's voice rarely was. I'm at the office and security won't let me in. They're saying I'm not on the list. They're saying this building isn't even Bridge Consulting anymore. Which office? I asked calmly, like I genuinely didn't understand the problem. Our office. The Bridge Consulting office on Morrison Street. Oh, I said, letting a note of realization creep into my voice. Madison, we don't use that building anymore. We moved last month. Didn't I mention that? Silence on the other end. I could practically hear her brain trying to process this information. Moved? What do you mean moved? The company outgrew that space, so we relocated to a larger facility. It's part of a corporate restructuring I've been working on. Totally routine. Happens all the time with growing businesses. Well, where's the new office? And why wasn't I told about this? I'll text you the address, but Madison, heads up. That's the Bridge Consulting Services office. Different entity. You might have some confusion getting in there too, since you're listed as an owner of Bridge Consulting LLC, not Bridge Consulting Services. Different entity. Charlie, what the fuck are you talking about? It's complicated. Business stuff. Corporate restructuring, subsidiary creation, asset transfers, pretty standard organizational changes for a company our size. Listen, I'm in a meeting right now. Why don't you call Dad? He can probably explain it better than I can. I didn't give her time to respond. I just hung up. 30 seconds later, my father called. I didn't answer. 2 minutes after that, my mother called. I didn't answer that either. I was in a meeting after all. A real one. With real business to discuss. Patricia raised an eyebrow. The calls are starting? Yep. How do you feel? Surprisingly good. Marcus laughed. I can't believe you're actually doing this. I didn't have a choice. They tried to take what I built. I protected it. By letting them think they succeeded. Patricia said admiringly, "It's brilliant. Cruel, but brilliant." Not cruel, I corrected. Just precise. The voicemails started piling up around noon. I listened to them while eating lunch at my desk. My father. "Charlotte, call me immediately. Madison is very upset. She says you've moved offices without telling anyone and she can't get into the building. This is unacceptable. We have a legal agreement. Call me back." My mother. "Honey, please call us back. There seems to be some confusion about the office and Madison can't find. Just please call us. We need to sort this out." Madison again. "Charlie, this isn't funny. Mum is freaking out. Dad is pissed. Just tell me where the actual office is and stop being weird about this." My father again, voice tighter. "Charlotte Marie West, you need to call me back right now. We have a signed agreement. You can't just shut Madison out of the business. This is legally binding." I waited until 5 p.m. to respond. I sent a single group text to all 3 of them. "Sorry, crazy busy day. Let's meet tomorrow at the house, 10 a.m. I'll explain everything." The responses came within seconds of each other. My father, "Fine, but this better be good." My mother, "Please, Charlotte, let's all stay calm." Madison, "You better not have fucked us over." I put my phone on silent, packed up my laptop, and went to dinner with Patricia and David Chen at a nice Italian restaurant downtown. We toasted to successful corporate restructuring with expensive wine and laughed about things that had nothing to do with family. That night, alone in my apartment, I pulled out the folder I'd been preparing for weeks. Inside were copies of every document related to both Bridge Consulting LLC and Bridge Consulting Services. The original Bridge Consulting LLC articles of incorporation from 8 years ago. The operating agreement showing sole owner, Charlotte West. Every annual report, every tax filing. All showing the same thing, 100% owned by me. Then, the documentation of Charlotte West Holdings formation 3 years ago, the creation of Bridge Consulting Services last month, the asset transfer agreements, the employee transfer documents, the client contract updates, and David Chen's legal opinion confirming that all actions were proper, legal, and in full compliance with state and federal law. Finally, at the bottom, the signed trust documents. The papers my family thought gave them control of my business. They did give them control. Control of an empty shell. I ran my finger over my signature on those pages and felt nothing but satisfaction. I arrived at my parents' house at 9:55 a.m., early enough to show I was taking this seriously, late enough to make them wait. They were assembled in the living room like a tribunal. My father in his chair, arms crossed, jaw tight. My mother on the couch, tissues clutched in her hand, even though she wasn't crying yet. Madison by the window radiating fury. The energy in the room was volcanic. "Sit down," my father said. It wasn't a request. I sat. Madison spoke first, words tumbling out in an angry rush. "What the hell is going on?" "I went back to the Morrison Street building this morning. It's completely empty. There's a fucking for lease sign in the window. The security guard said Bridge Consulting vacated the property a month ago." "That's correct," I said calmly. "We needed more space." "You didn't tell us," my mother said, voice trembling. "It's a routine business decision. I didn't think it required family consultation." "Where are the employees?" my father demanded. "At the new office." "And where is that?" "Downtown, near Pioneer Courthouse Square. Much better location, actually. More accessible for clients." "Madison went there," my father said. Each word clipped. They wouldn't let her in. "Security said she wasn't listed as an employee or an owner." "That's correct." The room went completely silent. Madison stopped pacing mid-step. My mother's hand went to her mouth. My father leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, that's correct?" he asked slowly. I pulled out the folder and set it carefully on the coffee table. 3 weeks ago, I began, keeping my voice even and professional. I signed papers transferring ownership of Bridge Consulting LLC to the West Family Business Trust, as requested. That company is now jointly owned by Madison and myself, with Mom and Dad as trustees. Everything you asked for, I gave you. "Right," my father said slowly. "So why can't Madison access the business?" "Because Bridge Consulting LLC no longer operates a business." The silence got heavier. "What are you talking about?" my mother whispered. I opened the folder and pulled out the first set of documents. What I didn't explain at the time, because nobody asked, is that Bridge Consulting LLC underwent a routine corporate restructuring about 4 weeks before I signed your papers. The actual business operations, the employees, the clients, the contracts, the revenue, the intellectual property, all assets of value were transferred to a new entity called Bridge Consulting Services. I pulled out more documents, spreading them across the coffee table like evidence at a trial. Bridge Consulting Services is a wholly owned subsidiary of Charlotte West Holdings, which is my parent company. I created Charlotte West Holdings 3 years ago for tax efficiency and liability protection. It owns multiple entities, including Bridge Consulting Services. I pulled out the corporate structure chart Patricia had prepared. Charlotte West Holdings is 100% owned by me, not by the family trust, not by anyone else. Just me, personally. I have no legal obligation to transfer, share, or distribute any portion of it to anyone. My father stood up so fast, his chair scraped against the floor. That's fraud. No, I said, meeting his eyes calmly. It's corporate restructuring. It happens thousands of times a day in America. Companies create subsidiaries, transfer assets between entities, reorganize their business structures for efficiency, tax purposes, liability protection, or completely legal. David Chen can confirm that if you'd like to call him. You tricked us, my mother said, tears spilling over now. I gave you exactly what you asked for, I replied. You wanted Bridge Consulting LLC. You have it. You wanted me to sign the papers giving you ownership. I signed them. You wanted a family business. You got one. You just didn't do due diligence on what you were acquiring. There's nothing there, Madison shouted. You gave us nothing. I gave you Bridge Consulting LLC, I said. A legally registered business entity in the state of Oregon. It has a business name, a registration number, and a bank account. I pulled out a printout of the Bridge Consulting LLC bank statement. Current balance, $847.32. That's what you own now. Split between Madison and me, 45% each. Under the wise stewardship of Mom and Dad as trustee. Congratulations on your new family business. My father's face had gone from red to purple. You can't do this. We'll sue you. For what exactly? I asked. I didn't breach any contract. I didn't commit fraud. I restructured my company, which was and remains entirely my company, before signing your papers. Those are two separate events. Any lawyer will tell you the same thing. This is why you waited, my mother said, understanding dawning through her tears. You moved everything first. Then you signed. The restructuring was already in progress when you first proposed the trust, I said. I'd been planning to consolidate operations under Bridge Consulting Services for months. It just happened to be completed before your signing deadline. It wasn't entirely true. I'd accelerated the timeline because of their demand. But it wasn't entirely false either. Patricia and I had been discussing reorganization for tax efficiency long before this crisis. You lied to us, my father said. I never lied. You assumed Bridge Consulting LLC and the actual business operations were the same thing. They haven't been the same thing for years. You never asked to see the corporate structure. You never asked for financial statements. You never asked for due diligence. You just assumed. We're your family, my mother cried. Exactly, I said quietly. You're my family. And you tried to take the one thing I'd built entirely on my own. The one thing that was mine. She's your sister, my father said, pointing at Madison. She deserves a chance. At what? At half ownership of something she didn't build? At being my equal partner despite never working a day in business? At getting success handed to her just because we share DNA? That's what family means, my mother said. We share, we support each other. You've never supported me. The words came out harder than I intended, but I didn't take them back. For 8 years, I worked myself to exhaustion building this company. You called it my little project. You said I needed a real job. Madison mocked me. And now, the moment it's worth something, you decide it's a family asset that needs to be redistributed for fairness. I stood up. So fine. Take it. Take Bridge Consulting LLC. Take the $800 in the bank account. Update your LinkedIn profiles. Tell everyone you're entrepreneurs. Print business cards. I picked up my folder. But the actual business, the employees who respect me, the clients who trust me, the revenue we generate, the future we're building, that's mine. It was always mine. And you can't have it. Charlotte, my mother said, standing now too, reaching for me. Please, we can fix this. We can work something out. There's nothing to fix, Mom. You got exactly what you wanted. A family business. You just don't have a business. I walked toward the door. Wait, Madison said. Her voice was different now. Smaller, uncertain. Charlie, come on. This is insane. We're family. We can work something out. Maybe I could work for you. As an employee, I could learn. I turned to look at her, really look at her, for the first time since I'd arrived. She was 27 years old. Still beautiful, still charming, but there was something desperate in her eyes now. The realization, maybe, that charm and beauty don't build companies. That waiting for opportunities to be handed to you doesn't work when the person you're waiting on has learned to protect what's theirs. No, Madison, I said, you don't want to work for me. You want what I've built. And those are very different things. That's not fair, she said. You're right. It's not fair. It wasn't fair when you mocked my nerd thing for years. It wasn't fair when Mom and Dad missed every important event in my life because you had a recital. It wasn't fair when they tried to give you half my company as a participation trophy. None of this is fair. I opened the door. But it's mine, and I'm keeping it. I stepped out into the cool October air and walked to my car. Behind me, I could hear shouting. My father's voice rising, my mother sobbing, Madison cursing, the sounds of a family imploding, but it sounded distant, like something happening to someone else. I drove back to downtown Portland, to the office building they'd never see the inside of, where my team was already deep into work on projects they'd never understand. Patricia was waiting in my office, 2 cups of coffee in hand. How'd it go? She asked, handing me one. Exactly as expected. Good. The PE firm confirmed for next Monday. Final investment terms. They're ready to move forward. Excellent. She paused at the door. For what it's worth, Charlotte. You did the right thing. Did I? They tried to take what you built. You protected yourself. That's not revenge. That's survival. After she left, I sat at my desk and looked out at the Portland skyline. My phone was already blowing up with messages. Texts from my mother. Voicemails from my father. A long, rambling email from Madison. I didn't read any of them. Not yet. Right now, I had work to do. The immediate aftermath was brutal. Not for me. My life continued exactly as it had. I went to work, managed my company, met with clients, continued negotiations with the private equity firm. But my family imploded. My father hired a lawyer within 24 hours. I knew because David Chen received a letter threatening litigation for fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, intentional interference with contractual relations, and something called corporate veil piercing that made David laugh so hard he had to set down his coffee. They have no case, he told me over the phone. Your restructuring was legal, properly documented, and completed before you signed their papers. Everything was above board. The only argument they could make is that you defrauded them by not disclosing the restructuring. But there's no legal requirement to disclose internal corporate decisions to third parties, even if those third parties are your parents. So we're safe. You're bulletproof, but I'll respond formally, just to make it clear we're prepared to defend. And Charlotte? I'm going to include a subtle mention of potential counterclaims for abuse of process and malicious prosecution. That should shut them down fast. It did. My father's lawyer sent one more letter, a much softer one, suggesting mediation to resolve this family matter amicably. David responded that we were open to mediation, but would not negotiate any transfer of assets from Charlotte West Holdings or Bridge Consulting Services, as those entities were not subject to the family trust and were entirely my personal property. After that, the legal threats stopped. My mother tried the emotional route. She called every day for 2 weeks, leaving voicemails that evolved through the full spectrum of grief. Day 1. Charlotte, please call me back. We need to talk about this. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Day 3. I don't understand how you could do this to us. We're your family. We raised you. How could you be so cruel? Day 5. Your father is devastated. Madison won't stop crying. Is this really what you want? To destroy your family over money? Day 7. I talked to Pastor Greg. He said pride comes before a fall, honey. Please, think about what you're doing. Day 10. Maybe we can compromise. What if Madison just worked for you? As an employee? Would that be acceptable? Day 14. I miss you. Please call me back. Even if you're angry. Even if you hate us. Please just talk to me. I didn't call back. Not because I hated them. Not even because I was angry anymore. But because engaging would mean reopening a negotiation I'd already closed. And I'd learned from 8 years of building a business that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is hold a boundary. Madison took a different approach. She went public. Sort of. She couldn't be explicit, that would invite legal action. But she started posting on Instagram and TikTok about toxic family members and people who change when money gets involved, and narcissists who manipulate systems to hurt their loved ones. The posts were vague enough to have plausible deniability, but specific enough that anyone who knew us could figure out what she was talking about. One TikTok in particular went viral. Well, viral by Madison standards. 14,000 views. She sat in her car, makeup free, crying, talking about how someone I trusted, someone I thought loved me, used legal loopholes to steal something that belonged to all of us. And the worst part? They're so smart that they made it look legal. They made it look like I was the problem. The comments were predictably sympathetic. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Family can be the most toxic. You deserve better. Name and shame. I watched the video once, then never looked at her social media again. Because here's what Madison's followers didn't know. She wasn't crying about losing a business. She was crying about losing access to something she'd never earned. She was mourning an opportunity that had been handed to her on a silver platter, only to discover the platter was empty. And while I understood her disappointment, I couldn't bring myself to feel guilty about it. The extended family got involved around week 3. My Aunt Linda called, attempting to mediate. "Charlotte, honey, I know there's been some kind of misunderstanding with your parents. Can you help me understand what happened?" I gave her the abbreviated version. Mom and Dad wanted to restructure my company into a family trust that would give Madison 50% ownership. I declined. They're upset about it. They said you tricked them. They said you signed papers, and then they discovered the company was empty. The company they wanted to take wasn't empty when I built it. They just didn't do their homework before trying to acquire it. But Charlotte, they're your parents. They were trying to help you, to secure your legacy. By giving half of it to Madison, Aunt Linda, Madison has never worked in business. She's never shown interest in what I do. They wanted to redistribute something I built entirely on my own because they thought it was fair. Family is about fairness, honey. No, I said. Family is about love. Fairness is what strangers demand when they want something you have. She was quiet for a long moment. You sound very cynical. I sound protected, she sighed. Your mother is heartbroken. Can you at least call her? Talk to her? I'll think about it. I didn't think about it, but other family members kept calling. My Uncle Dave, my cousins, even my grandmother, who was 84 and barely understood what an LLC was. Charlotte, dear, families fight, but we forgive. That's what love means. I haven't done anything that needs forgiving, Grandma. You hurt your parents. You hurt your sister. I protected myself. Those are different things. Are they? I thought about that. Yes, they are. The family pressure was intense for about a month. Then it faded as people realized I wasn't going to cave, wasn't going to apologize, wasn't going to negotiate. A few relatives stopped talking to me entirely. Most just got uncomfortable whenever my name came up. But a few, surprisingly, reached out privately to say they understood. My cousin Jessica, who'd always been the black sheep of the family, sent me a text. "Good for you. Seriously, don't let them guilt you into giving up what you built." My Uncle Tom, who was estranged from most of the family, called to say, "Your father tried the same thing with my business 20 years ago. I wasn't as smart as you. I gave in. Biggest mistake of my life. Don't back down." Those messages meant more than I expected. The private equity firm finalized their investment in November. $4 million for a 30% stake in Charlotte West Holdings, which valued my company at roughly $13 million. The money would fund our expansion into Seattle and Denver, hire additional staff, and give us runway to pursue larger corporate clients. Veronica Tran, the lead investor, took me to dinner after we signed the papers. "You've built something remarkable," she said over wine. "Sustainable, scalable, with a clear competitive advantage. Most entrepreneurs your age are still figuring out product market fit. You're way ahead of that." Thank you. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. The family trust situation your lawyer mentioned during due diligence, is that resolved? I'd been transparent with Veronica about the legal threats. It was better to disclose than have it come up later. Completely resolved. My family tried to claim ownership of a subsidiary that I'd already restructured. They have no legal claim to any part of Charlotte West Holdings or Bridge Consulting Services. Good, because I'm going to be honest with you. Some of our partners were concerned. Family disputes can destroy businesses. This isn't a dispute anymore. It's just distance. She studied me. Do you regret it? Protecting your company? No. Good. Because here's what I've learned in 20 years of investing. Founders who can't set boundaries don't succeed. Employees try to take advantage. Partners push for unfair terms. Even family members, especially family members, will try to extract value they didn't create. The founders who make it are the ones who can say no, even when it's painful. That's a lonely way to live. It's a successful way to live. And success attracts better people than the ones you had to leave behind. I thought about that a lot in the following weeks. The holidays were strange. Thanksgiving came, and for the first time in my life, I didn't go home for Sunday dinner or any of the associated family gatherings. My mother called the week before. Charlotte, please come for Thanksgiving. The whole family will be there. We can set aside our differences for one day. I don't think that's a good idea, Mum. Why not? Because nothing has changed. You still think I owe you part of my company. I still know I don't. Being in the same room won't fix that. So you're just going to cut us off? Forever? I'm creating distance. That's different than cutting off. It doesn't feel different. I know, Mom, but it's what I need right now. She cried. I listened. Then I said goodbye and turned off my phone. I spent Thanksgiving with Patricia and her family. Her husband, Miguel, was a chef, and the meal was incredible. Her kids, twin girls, age 7, told me knock-knock jokes and showed me their gymnastics moves. It was warm and chaotic, and nothing like the formal, tense dinners I'd grown up with. And I realized something. I didn't miss my family's Thanksgiving. I missed the fantasy of what family holidays should be. But the reality, I didn't miss that at all. Christmas was harder. Not because I wanted to go home, I didn't. But because Christmas had always been the one holiday where my family almost felt normal. The decorations, the ritual of opening presents, the way my mother made hot chocolate from scratch, there were pieces of it I'd loved. Madison sent me a card. Just a card, no letter or note. The front had a generic winter scene. Snow-covered trees, a cabin with smoke rising from the chimney. Inside she'd written, I miss you, M. I stared at that card for a long time. Did I miss her? I missed the version of her I'd wanted her to be. The sister who could have been proud of me instead of resentful. Who could have supported my success instead of trying to claim it. But the actual Madison, the one who'd mocked my work for years and then celebrated when she thought she'd get half of it for free. I didn't miss her. I put the card in a drawer and didn't respond. The new year brought clarity. Bridge Consulting Services hit 4 million in revenue in Q1. We hired 15 new employees. We opened the Denver office. We signed 2 major corporate clients I'd been pursuing for months. My life was full, not just with work, but with purpose. I started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee dates and dinners with people I met through work or friends. I took a weekend trip to the coast with Sarah, who flew up from San Francisco. We stayed in a tiny beach cottage, drank wine, and talked about everything except family. "You seem lighter," she told me. "I don't think I've ever seen you this relaxed." "I feel lighter." "No regrets? About protecting my company?" "None." "About losing your family?" "I thought about that." "I didn't lose my family, Sarah. I just stopped pretending I had one." March brought an unexpected phone call. Madison. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Charlie." Her voice was small, tentative, nothing like the confident tone she usually used. "Hey, Mads. Can we talk? Like, actually talk?" "About what?" "About everything. About what happened. About me being a complete asshole." I sat down. "Okay. I fucked up," she said. "I really, really fucked up. And I'm sorry." "Okay. That's it? Just okay?" "What do you want me to say, Madison?" "I accept your apology. It's water under the bridge. We're good now." "I don't know. Something. Here's the truth. I believe you're sorry. I believe you feel bad about what happened. But I don't know if you understand why what you did was wrong." "I do understand. I was entitled. I thought I deserved half of something I didn't build just because we're sisters. That's part of it. What's the other part? You didn't just accept Mom and Dad's plan. You celebrated it. When they told you you'd be co-owner, you didn't say, 'Wait, that doesn't seem fair to Charlie.' You said, 'This is amazing.' You were happy to take what wasn't yours." Silence on the line. Then quietly, "You're right. I know. I was jealous, Charlie. I've always been jealous of you. That surprised me." "Of me? Madison, you were the star. Everyone loved you. Everyone loved the performance. But you had something real. You built something from nothing. You had purpose. And I was just floating, waiting for someone to tell me what to do with my life, waiting for success to happen to me instead of building it myself." I didn't respond. "I tried," she continued. "After everything fell apart, I tried to restart Bridge Consulting LLC. Mom and Dad made me CEO. They thought I could salvage it, use the name recognition, reach out to your old clients." "How'd that go?" She laughed bitterly. "I couldn't get a single meeting. Nobody would take my calls. The few people who did talk to me asked why they should work with the new bridge when they were already happy with Bridge Consulting Services. They said you were the reason they'd hired the company in the first place, not the name. You." "It's a relationship business," I said. "People hire consultants they trust." "I know that now. I spent 4 months trying, Charlie. I made a website. I cold called businesses. I pitched people on LinkedIn. I even hired a marketing consultant with my own money. But nobody wanted what I was selling because I had no idea what I was actually selling. I don't know how to help businesses. I don't know what you know. I never bothered to learn because I thought it would just, I don't know, be obvious, be easy. It's not easy. I know that now. God, do I know that now? Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know I get it now. I get what you built. I get why you protected it. I get why you couldn't just hand it over. and I'm sorry for thinking you should have. I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, not quite, but maybe the beginning of it. What are you doing now? I asked. I'm taking business classes. At community college, introduction to accounting, business management, Excel for beginners, all the boring stuff I should have learned years ago. I'm working part-time at a marketing agency, learning from the ground up. And I deleted all those TikToks and Instagram posts about toxic family members. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. They weren't true. You weren't toxic, I was entitled, and I needed to own that. We sat in silence for a moment. Madison? Yeah? Thank you for saying that. Does it help? Even a little? Yeah, it does. Can we... I don't know. Can we try to have some kind of relationship? Not right away. I know I need to earn that. But someday... I thought about it. Really thought about it. Ask me again in a year, I said. After you finish those classes and get some real experience. Show me you're serious about doing the work. Okay, she said. I will. And Charlie? Yeah? For what it's worth, I really am proud of you. I know I never said it before, but I am. What you built is incredible. After we hung up, I sat at my desk for a long time, looking out at the Portland skyline. Was it enough? The apology, the acknowledgement, the promise to do better? I didn't know, but it was something, and maybe something was enough to start with. 2 years after the signing, my life looked completely different. Bridge Consulting Services had grown to 70 employees across 3 offices. Annual revenue hit 22 million. The private equity investment had paid off spectacularly. We'd expanded faster than projected, landed several Fortune 500 clients, and were in preliminary talks with a major consulting firm about acquisition. But more than the numbers, I felt different. Lighter, like Sarah had said, but also more grounded. I'd learned something important in those 2 years. Protecting yourself isn't the same as punishing others. Setting boundaries isn't revenge, and choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. My relationship with my parents was still complicated. We'd reached a kind of uneasy truce about 6 months after the confrontation. My father had finally accepted that I wasn't going to give them access to Charlotte West Holdings or Bridge Consulting Services, and the legal threats had stopped completely. My mother called occasionally. We talked about safe topics, the weather, recipes, her garden, her book club. We avoided the business entirely. Once she said, I hope someday you can forgive us. I forgave you a long time ago, Mum, I said. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back to how things were. What does it mean? It means I understand you did what you thought was right. You genuinely believed you were protecting me, securing my future. But it also means I recognize that your version of helping was actually harmful, and I get to protect myself from that harm. That sounds like something a therapist would say. It is. I've been in therapy for 18 months. Oh. I'd started therapy not because of the family crisis, though that certainly prompted it, but because I'd realized I'd spent 30+ years of my life building external success while ignoring internal work. My therapist, Dr. Sharon Kim, helped me understand patterns I'd been repeating since childhood. The overfunctioning, the seeking approval from people who'd never give it, The belief that if I just worked hard enough, achieved enough, built enough, I'd finally be seen. You were looking for validation from people who were fundamentally incapable of giving it, Sharon told me. Not because they're bad people, but because they couldn't see you. You were invisible to them not because of who you were, but because of who they needed you to be. Who did they need me to be? The easy child. The one who didn't require attention. The one who succeeded quietly so they could focus on Madison's drama. And when you became too successful to ignore, they couldn't handle it. Because your success disrupted the family narrative. That made sense in a way that was almost painful. Madison kept her word. She finished her business courses. She worked at the marketing agency for 18 months, learning skills, making mistakes, slowly building competence. She didn't ask me for anything. No job, no advice, no connections. Then, 2 years after our conversation, she called. "Charlie, I'm ready." Ready for what? To ask again. About working for you. You said to ask in a year after I got experience. It's been 2 years. I've taken 8 business courses. I've worked at 2 different companies. I'm still not great, but I'm better. And I want to learn from the best. The best? You. You're the best, Charlie. And I want to learn from you. I met her for coffee the following week. She showed up in business casual. Not the designer outfits she used to wear, but practical clothes that looked like she'd actually worked in them. She brought a portfolio showing the projects she'd worked on, the skills she'd learned, references from her supervisors. "I'm not asking for special treatment," Xunyang said. "I know I have to start at the bottom. I'm applying as a junior consultant, entry level, same process as everyone else." "Why do you want this?" "Honestly, because I finally understand what you do, and it's actually interesting. Helping businesses solve problems, implementing systems, seeing real results. It is satisfying in a way acting never was. Acting was about me. This is about making things better. I like that. It's hard work. I know. I'm ready for hard work." I thought about it for a long time. Then I said, "Okay, but not to work directly for me, not yet. I'll refer you to my Seattle office. If they hire you, you'll work there for at least a year, reporting to someone else and proving yourself without family dynamics involved. If you do well, Tom, we can revisit." She smiled, a real smile, not performed. "That's fair. Thank you." My Seattle office hired her. 6 months later, her manager told me she was surprisingly good. She works hard, asks smart questions, and admits when she doesn't know something. For someone who used to be, frankly, insufferable on social media, she's quite humble in person. "People can change," I said. "Apparently." I still didn't know if Madison and I would ever be truly close. The relationship we'd lost, or maybe never had, couldn't be rebuilt exactly as it was. But maybe we could build something new. Something based on mutual respect instead of family obligation. Something earned instead of assumed. The acquisition offer came in June. McKinsey wanted to buy Bridge Consulting Services for $65 million, and Patricia and I sat in my office looking at the term sheet. "This is life-changing money," she said. "I know." "Are you going to take it?" "I don't know." "What's the hesitation?" "I built this. From nothing. Signing it away feels like..." "Like what?" Like giving away a piece of myself. Patricia nodded. I get that. But Charlie, look at what you've built. 70 employees whose careers you've shaped. Hundreds of clients whose businesses you've saved. A methodology that works and could scale even further with McKinsey's resources. This isn't about giving away what you built. It's about letting it grow beyond you. What would you do? Honestly, I'd take it. You're 33 years old. You could take this money, start something new, or invest, travel, finally have a life outside of work. Or you could stay, grow it more, and sell for even more in 5 years. Either way, you've won. You've proven everything you needed to prove. I thought about that for a long time. I thought about the 23-year-old version of me, sitting in a studio apartment with $4,000 and a dream. The one who cold called 97 businesses before getting a single meeting. The one who worked 3 jobs and slept 4 hours a night and built something from nothing. I thought about what I'd been trying to prove. To my family, to myself, to the world. And I realized I'd already proven it. I didn't need to keep building to prove I could. I'd won it. I'd built something that lasted. Something that mattered. Something that was entirely mine, and that nobody could ever take away because I'd protected it. Let's negotiate, I said. I want 70 millionaires, and I want retention bonuses for key employees, and I want you to get your full payout. Patricia grinned. Done. We finalized the acquisition in September, $72 million. I kept 5% equity, which would continue to grow with McKinsey's resources. Patricia got her payout. Every employee got retention bonuses. The day we signed, I stood in the office, my office, the one I'd built, and felt a strange mix of emotions. Pride, relief, sadness, liberation. I'd done it. I'd built a company worth $72 million from 4,000 and a dream. I'd proven to my family, and more importantly to myself, that I wasn't the invisible daughter. I wasn't the afterthought. I wasn't someone whose value could be divided up and redistributed for fairness. I was a builder, a creator, someone who could take nothing and make something real. And nobody could ever take that away. I took my parents to dinner a month after the sale. We hadn't had a meal together in 2 years. But I called them and said, I'd like to see you. Just dinner. Just us. We met at a nice restaurant downtown. Neutral territory. They looked older. My father's hair had gone completely grey. My mother had new lines around her eyes. We ordered wine and made small talk about weather and traffic, and anything except the giant elephant sitting at the table with us. Finally, over dessert, my father said, We heard about the acquisition. Congratulations. Thank you. That's a lot of monies. It is. My mother reached across the table. Charlotte, I owe you an apology. We owe you an apology. What we tried to do, it was wrong, Chair. We didn't understand what you'd built. We didn't appreciate it. And we tried to take it from you. You were trying to protect me, I said. I understand that now. But we weren't, my father said. Not really. We were trying to solve Madison's problems by giving her access to your success. That wasn't protection. It was theft. Legal theft, maybe, but theft nonetheless. I was quiet for a long moment. "Thank you for saying that," I finally said. "It means a lot." "Does it change anything?" my mother asked. "Between us?" "Yes. I don't know yet, but it's a start." We finished dessert in more comfortable silence. As we were leaving, my father pulled me aside. "Charlotte, for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Not just because of the money, because you stood up for yourself, even against us. Especially against us." "Thanks, Dad. We raised you to be independent. I guess we just didn't expect you to be this independent." I smiled. "Neither did I." I'm sitting in that same Portland cafe where this story began. 3 years after the signing. 1 year after the acquisition. Rain streaking down the windows. Coffee is still too hot to drink properly. But everything else is different. I'm 34 years old. I have more money than I know what to do with. I've started a venture capital fund focused on women-owned businesses, helping other entrepreneurs build what I built, but with fewer obstacles. I bought a house. Not a mansion, just a comfortable place with a garden and room for friends to visit, and enough space that it doesn't feel empty. I'm dating someone, a software engineer named Alex, who makes me laugh and has absolutely no interest in business strategy, which is surprisingly refreshing. It's not serious yet, but it could be. And that possibility doesn't scare me anymore. Madison works in my Denver office now. She got promoted to senior consultant last month. We're not best friends, but we talk regularly. We've built something new, not the sisterhood of our childhood, which was always one-sided, but an adult relationship based on respect. Last week, she sent me a text. "Closed my biggest client yet. Just wanted to say thank you for giving me a chance." I responded, "You earned it. Proud of you." And I meant it. My parents and I have Sunday dinners occasionally. Not every week. Some wounds take time to fully heal, but enough that we're rebuilding something. It's different than it was. More honest. Less performed. Last Sunday, my mother said, "I'm sorry we didn't see you, Charlotte, all those years. I'm sorry we didn't see how remarkable you were." "I'm sorry I needed you to see me," I said. "I should have been able to see myself." "Do you? See yourself now?" I thought about that. About the girl who read Nancy Drew under a tree at her sister's birthday party. About the college student who built a business plan nobody wanted to read. About the 23-year-old who cold called 97 businesses before getting a yes. About the woman who protected what she built, even when it cost her family. "Yeah, Mom," I said. "I see myself now. People ask me sometimes if I regret how it happened. If I wish I'd handled it differently. If I wish I'd just given Madison a chance to work with me from the beginning. Avoided the whole confrontation. The answer is complicated. Do I regret protecting what I built? Never. Do I regret the pain it caused? Sometimes. Not enough to change my decision, but enough to wish there had been another way. But here's what I know now. There wasn't another way. My family couldn't see my success until I forced them to. They couldn't respect my boundaries until I enforced them. They couldn't value what I'd built until they understood they couldn't just take it. The confrontation wasn't optional. It was necessary. Because some lessons can only be learned through loss. I still have the folder. The one with all the documents, the transfer agreements, the trust paperwork, the corporate restructuring plans. I keep it in a file cabinet in my home office. Sometimes I take it out and look through it, remembering that moment when I signed those papers. When I smiled and gave them exactly what they asked for, knowing it was empty. It wasn't cruel. It was precise. Like a bridge, connecting what matters, supporting what's real, built to last. Everything else? I let it fall. Last week, I spoke at a women's entrepreneurship conference. A young woman came up to me afterward, maybe 25, bright-eyed and nervous. "I'm starting a business," she said. "A consulting firm, actually. And my family thinks I'm crazy. They want me to get a real job, but I want to build something." "Then build it," I said. "What if they're right? What if I fail?" "Then you'll fail, and you'll learn, and you'll try again." Did you ever fail? Constantly. I still do. Failure is part of building. But what if my family never supports it? What if they always think it's a waste of time? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the 23-year-old version of myself. "Then you build it anyway," I said. "You build it for yourself, not for their approval, not for their validation, for yourself. And if they come around later, great. If they don't, you'll still have something real. How do you know it's worth it? Because the alternative is spending your life building someone else's dream. Or worse, not building anything at all because you're too afraid of disappointing people who will never be satisfied, and anyway." She nodded slowly. "Thank you. One more thing," I said. "Protect what you build. Don't let anyone, not family, not friends, not investors, nobody, take it from you. You set the terms. You enforce the boundaries. You decide what's yours. Even if it costs you relationships. Especially then. Because relationships built on you giving away what's yours aren't relationships. They're hostage situations." She smiled. A real smile. The kind that comes from being seen. "I'm going to do it," she said. "I'm going to build it." "Good. Come find me in 5 years and tell me how it went." Not the end of my story. I'm still building, still learning, still figuring out what comes next. But the end of this chapter. The chapter where I was invisible. The chapter where I worked myself to exhaustion, seeking approval from people who couldn't give it. The chapter where I learned to protect what I built, even when it hurt. That chapter is over. And the next chapter, it's just beginning. If you've ever been the invisible child, I see you. If you've ever built something alone, while everyone around you took credit or dismissed your work, I see you. If you've ever had to choose between family peace and self-preservation, I really, really see you. Here's what I want you to know. Protecting what you've built isn't selfish. It's survival. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's necessary. And refusing to sacrifice your life's work to maintain someone else's comfort isn't betrayal. It's self-respect. You don't owe anyone your success just because you share DNA. You don't owe anyone access to what you built with your own hands, your own mind, your own sacrifice. You are allowed to build something entirely yours, and you are allowed to protect it, even from families, especially from family. Because here's the secret they don't tell you. The people who truly love you will celebrate your success, not try to claim it. They'll respect your boundaries, not push against them. They'll support what you build, not try to dismantle it for parts. And if they can't do that, they're not your family. Not really. Your real family is the people who see you, who celebrate you, who cheer for your success without demanding a piece of it. Build your bridges to those people. Everyone else, let them fall.